Formex just launched a brand new field watch. And do you know what they've called it? Field. Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Yes, indeed, for a brand known for their innovation whose name means extreme shape, they tend to play it somewhat safe when it comes to their nomenclature, don't they? They released a dive watch last year, for example, simply called Reef. This field watch simply called Field. Anyway, you saw the pop-up, I'm sure. This video is sponsored by Formex. They sent me Field towards the end of January this year, beginning of February, to coincide with the launch date, which was the 10th of Feb. I was also able to interview RAPHAEL, who is the brand CEO and chief designer. Really fascinating, to be honest. I don't often get the chance to speak to brand owners, brand designers. It was great to chat with RAPHAEL about where he saw the brand going, where the brand came from, use of movement, sizing, etc., and where he thought this field was pitched in the market. Competitor brands, competitor models. He didn't give me too much of an answer there, so I'll tell you where I think this watch is pitched a little later on in the video. Now, it is the most affordable Formex you can buy. Most of their stuff ranges from 1,500 to 2.5 grand, all the way up to 9 grand. Doesn't necessarily mean to say it's cheap though. Prices for these start at $800 up to about $1,000 depending on strap options. Let's flip the camera and have a look at it. I will of course leave a link to that interview, which is on Formex's own YouTube channel, in the description of the video. Now, I am a fan of the brand with two Formex in my collection already, those being the Essence Leggera and the aforementioned Reef. In terms of build quality, the Reef is absolutely phenomenal. Just over $2,000, I think it makes rivals such as the Oris Aquis look and feel a little bit cheap by comparison. My Essence Leggera has received a huge amount of wrist time thanks to the fact that it is a cost chronometer certified automatic full-size watch with a fabulous adjustable class system that weighs in at only 65 grams. So I was keen to see how they would bring their signature design language and innovation into something as simple as the field watch. And this is the result, a watch that takes the classic Dirty Dozen field watch style, but adds enough touches that you'd know it was a Formex even if they took the logo off, I think anyway. I will discuss those specific touches a bit later on, but first let's do dimensions and specifications. Now, I think they need some new calipers over at Formex HQ. They call this a 41. I measure it at just under 40. I measure it at 39.7 mil in diameter, only 10.6 mil thick. Slimness on wrist and wearability, definitely another Formex signature. 48 mil lug to lug, 20 mil lug width. Now, on this leather strap with their signature on the fly adjustment system, it weighs in at bang on 70. If you're a weight weenie, there is a cheaper nylon option which takes it down to 55 grams, even lighter than that Leggera. And it achieves that minimal weight because the case, crown, bezel and case back are all made of titanium. You probably guessed that already by looking at this one. It's got that signature dull grey gunmetal colour. Now, it is bead blasted and then coated for hardness thereafter. So lighter than steel, but harder than steel. Very, very simple case finish here. I will return to that a bit later on. Formex branded crown, nice and easy to grip, unguarded, screw down crown, 150 meters of water resistance, and some more Formex signature features, little raised facets there either side of the lugs. Now, please don't spit your chips today when I tell you that this leather strap costs $200 more than the nylon. Nice kind of crazy horse finish here. You can see the grain cross stitched. It's all very nice. It's got the Formex logo on it. But this is why it costs more. This is their signature carbon fiber on the fly adjustment class system, and it is worth the extra, believe me. It's a push button deployment style, double push to release. Not only can you tighten it just by squeezing that patented ratcheting system, you can then release it by pressing the bottom of those two buttons and pulling out. Very comfortable, doesn't add too much bulk either. Case back, as noted, is titanium and screw-on concentric hexagons there with the Formex logo in the middle. Bit of a spec sheet around the outer edge as well. Now, Formex are a Swiss company. This is a Swiss-made watch, so it needs a Swiss-made movement, and it gets a Sellita SW200. Now, it is just a standard grade version, but hey, not a bad set of numbers. Running within cost specs, even though it's not cost certified. Very healthy amplitude and an acceptable level of beat error for a fresh piece. 26 dual hacking and hand winding, bi-directional winding. Roughly 40-hour power reserve out of these. They quote 38, but in my experience you tend to get a little bit over 40. They tend to underestimate it slightly. But let's get it outside and have a look at the dial and hands under macro. Definite dirty dozen, so mid-20th century inspiration for this one, but with enough modern touches to bring it into the 21st century. Field watches tend to be a little bit prescriptive. There's not an awful lot you can do with them before they start becoming something other than a field watch. So signatures like that train track around the outer edge are almost mandatory, but they've added their own twist here by making it a sandwich dial. Sandwich dial definitely helps when it comes to Loom, which I'll show you in just a minute or two. One Formex signature, I think, is the date complication down there at 6 o'clock with those twin bevels coming in from either side. That's present on this field. It's also present on the Essence. It's also present on the Reef. Like I said, you could take the logo off of this one and I would at least be able to tell you that it was definitely a Formex. And then there's the Arabics. I reckon these are going to be a little bit controversial. Not everybody is going to appreciate them, but RAPHAEL, the designer, was particularly proud of these. Stencil style because it is a military piece, but definitely non-traditional. Have a look at the 2s, have a look at the 5, have a look at the 4. If you take those off the dial, if you look at one of those numerals in isolation, you may not even guess that it is a numeral. The new Formex logo printed above the pinion and just field, also in stencil print with 150 meters beneath the pinion. Swiss made obviously either side of that recessed index at the 6 o'clock, and a vintage looking syringe handset. Now the hands are in brushed silver and do actually help add a little bit of contrast and therefore a little bit of legibility against the rest of the matte dial. This particular color variant is the Sage, by the way. There's blacks, there's blues, there's even a purple, which who knows could end up being the color of 2022, or maybe not. On to the Loom. I did hint earlier on that the Loom was decent, and it is decent. Another opportunity to have a look at those rather unusual Arabics. Yeah, particularly the 2, the 4, the 5, even the 7, definitely a little bit unusual. Now they have stuck with the vintage theme with the Loom anyway, because this watch features C3 Old Radium style Superluminova. Old Radium never quite as good as C3. The fact that there is a whole sandwich layer chock full of Loom definitely helps, but yeah, it's still not going to be as bright as C3 or even BGW9. But let's get it on wrist. Regardless of what you think of the looks, regardless of what you think of those Arabics, it wears really, really well. Definitely a strength. Titanium, 70 grams on the leather strap, and that adjustable system means you always get a great fit. Like I said though, it's a 40, it's not a 41. Actually, it even perhaps wears a little smaller than a 40 on wrist because it's got a decent lug to lug and because it's so light. Overhead legibility is pretty good as well. Flat sapphire crystal with plenty of AR undercoating, and you can see what I mean. The brushed silver hands do really help this one. They just add a bit of contrast, especially on the angle. Outside natural light, again, you can see what I mean about those silver hands and the anti-reflective coating on the flat sapphire crystal. You can mix and match the leather straps with these, by the way. They sent me this paler brown. I think it looks good on the darker brown as well. You can check it on the Formex website. Again, I'll leave a link to that in the description of the video as well. On wrist, nice and neat, nice and light. They talk about an effective thickness of 9mm. I've never really been into these kind of effective thicknesses. Either it's 10.6 or it's not 10.6, and this one is 10.6. Wears well as a consequence of that measurement though. Pocket shot to finish. Muted colour palette of the watch today has been complemented by my own muted colour palette of grey and blue linen shorts. So far so good then, but this is the section of the video that keeps watches up at night. The moans and niggles section. And I do have a couple of complaints about this one. The finish that they've used on the titanium, the coating, makes it look a little grubby most of the time. I'm not sure whether it picks up the oils from my fingers. Not just my watch though. All the other watches, all the other reviewers that have had a look at this one so far, all the watches look the same. You can see kind of colour variants, dark patches, particularly around the crown, which is why I wonder if it's oils from my hands. Now, as noted, you can mix and match the leather strap so you get a tonal match between your chosen dial colour and the leather. Leather strap though, plus that clasp, is a $200 add-on. This is the standard, the kind of nylon with Velcro. It's very nice, it's super comfortable, and it takes the weight down to 55 grams, but they only offer two different colours. This one in a kind of pale teal blue that doesn't really go with this sage dial, and a black one which also doesn't really go with this sage dial. I think they need to add another couple of colour options. And then there's the price, $830 on a nylon or $1,000 on one of those leather straps. Now you do get a 3-year warranty for that, which is great, but there is some serious competition out there from other brands when it comes to field watches. Hamilton, of course, make dozens and dozens and dozens of field watches. They also make a titanium in 42mm. The list price on this is bang on $1,000. That's before you start shopping around for a discount. And I think this Formex is also trying to get sales from various micro brands, including Boulder, who really specialise in these military style field watches. Here's their Expedition 2, for example. It's only in stainless steel and it's not Swiss made, but it is $100 cheaper than the Formex. But the watch that immediately came to my mind when this one arrived was the SWC Bunker. Also coated titanium with heaps of Loom, a Salita 200, ridiculously light on a nylon strap, $430. That's half the price almost of the Formex. I gotta say though, the Formex is a far better looking watch than the SWC. Has that sandwich dial, the lovely date complication. The dial is actually curved around the edges, which is nice, but $400 is a big jump to go from one to the other when the specs are almost identical. So stylistically successful, innovative in the way it looks, I think, as well as the way it wears, and the cheapest way to get into a Formex, but you're gonna have to have a think if it's worth the extra over the similarly specified competition. So there you have it, another really interesting offering by Formex. I think their range is looking very good these days with the Essence, the Reef and now the Field. If you don't fancy this one but you're in for a field watch, why not check out my review of the SWC Bunker that I referenced, or its little brother, the SWC Arc. Thanks for watching, see you again soon.